Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak because, for me, this issue is deeply personal. And I'm so grateful to be able to debate this issue as a state senator representing the 28th District, because for me, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I am a naturalized U.S. citizen. I'm incredibly proud to be an American. As I say this, I'm reminded of the stories that we've heard from advocates of this bill. And these stories are real. These lives are impacted by what we do here and what happens throughout the world. We really realize that this world truly is far, far smaller than it's ever been. But I want to be able to share with you the experience I have. And the stories that have been shared earlier is this country was built by immigrants. My dad made the incredible sacrifice, initially escaping from communism and socialism in China, to be able to go over to the island of Formosa, Taiwan, and built a life for his family. But upon realizing the limitations within his limited access to education and opportunity, he took a sacrifice to come to the United States. And he faced incredible hardship. The hardships he endured were beyond the unconscionable working conditions, abusive employers, but he persevered. He never complained. He recognized it was worthwhile to pursue the American dream, to make a better life for his family. Fast forward 7 years later, he brings the family to the United States. For the first time, we were together. And we celebrated that by being a family together. And we didn't even mind the fact that we grew up in a federal housing project, because to us, we were pursuing the American dream. We never complained. We never complained. And so the key is, and I wholeheartedly believe that, as we mentioned before, our immigration policy have failed the American people and the undocumented residents in this country. The fact that our federal government has failed to address policies, and the most inhumane policy that has existed is the separation of families at our borders, a policy that existed from the Obama administration to the current administration. For me, that is particularly inhumane, because for me, the immigrant experience was complete because we were together as a family. This bill does nothing to resolve that. Saying that, what this bill does raise has an alarming concern is the issue of public safety. It is not a debate in my mind, in my heart, about the issue of our undocumented residents and the plight that they struggle to pursue the American dream. For me, this bill is fundamentally based on the issue of public safety. And I'll go to the line specifically of line 101, where we have raised to a criminal standard to obtaining a warrant to detain someone. And if the indulgence of Madam President, I'd like to read the 7 factors that have been removed to be able to detain someone in this bill. And that is why I'm particularly alarmed. I think, number 1, we're going to remove that we can no longer detain someone without a warrant of having been convicted of a felony. Number 2, an individual that is subject to pending criminal charges in this state where bond has not been posted. Number 3, has an outstanding arrest warrant in this state. Number 4, is identified as a known gang member in the database of the National Crime Information Center or any similar database, or is designated as a security risk group member or a security risk group safety threat member by the Department of Corrections. Number 5, is identified as a possible match in the federal terrorist screening database or similar databases. Number 6, is subject to a final order of deportation or removal issued by a federal immigration authority. Number 7, presents an unacceptable risk to public safety as determined by law enforcement officials. This statute removes those 7 standards from an opportunity to detain someone without a warrant. So through you, Madam President, I have a question for the proponent of this bill.
Senator Winfield. Senator
Thank
Long,
you, ma'am. Thank you. As mentioned earlier by Senator Bizzarro, the fact of not being able to obtain a warrant until an incident of a crime. Would that be effective, this bill? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Winfield.
Through you, Madam President, I believe that what this bill does is there's the civil immigration detainer and then the warrant, as you are discussing, and the agent or the agency making the request would have to provide to the judge who could sign the warrant objective reasons why this individual should be subject to the warrant. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Hwang.
Through you, Madam President, to the good chair of Judiciary, I am not a lawyer, but are those standards higher than what is previously set by this statute to be able to possibly detain someone without a warrant? Because what I see in this standard is we have significantly increased the standards and potentially hampered our law enforcement officials or federal officials to ensure, as a note of caution, to detain someone that fit these 7 criteria. What this bill could possibly do, through you, Madam President, would that raise the risk?
Senator Winfield.
Through you, Madam President, well, I would say that if the individual has an outstanding arrest warrant, you could probably make that standard. I would say that if the individual is on the risk group database or is a threat, you could probably make that standard. I would say if they want a federal terrorist watch list, you could probably make that standard. What I'm suggesting to you is I think you could make the standard. I think you'd have a problem if it was the opinion of a law enforcement agent that they may or may not be an unacceptable risk. That might be a little bit difficult to do. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Winfield. Senator Hwang.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the good chairman's answers. But then why remove, through you, Madam President, all 7 of them? Could we not have been more selective in defining some of the potential risks? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Winfield.
Through you, Madam President, to be completely transparent here, there was conversation, as with many bills, about the potential for some of these being left in the bill. Should it make a difference to how this discussion through this building happened, and that pretty much fell apart, and so we remain with the bill that we started with. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Winfield. Senator Hwang.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate the good chair's answer on that, but it raises serious concerns and doubts for me, because as an immigrant, I absolutely respect immigration rights. I respect people's pursuit of the American dream. But being said, it should not come at the risk of the greater public safety. What this bill does is it raises the tolerance of risk for our citizens and undocumented residents. So, if you'll indulge me, ma'am, I'll share a quick story. 45 years ago, when I was able and privileged to come into this country, my dad was in New York City. It was in the early 70s. I'm a rambunctious 9-year-old who had not seen his dad for 7 years. He takes one look at me, and he surveys the fact that this person is full of energy and opinion. I'm glad to say that it hasn't changed. But saying that, my dad also evaluated the environment that he was in New York City, full of crime, full of danger, full of gangs, undocumented or not. He made a conscious decision to move his family to an area unknown, all the way up to Watertown, New York. Believe me, if you knew Watertown, New York, you would realize it was a bad decision move on a location basis. But he made the move because ultimately for him, as a new immigrant, as an individual that was pursuing the American dream for his family, and this goes for everyone in this state, in this country, pursuing the American dream, what is equally important to them was the public safety, the individual safety of their loved ones. Because the opportunity to succeed in this country isn't worth a hill of beans if your loved ones are hurt, if your loved ones are killed, if your loved ones are forever ruined by crimes perpetrated by individuals that we could have prevented. So in moving up there, my dad took the risk of moving to an unknown because one thing was certain: he provided the safest setting for us to pursue the American dream. My hope is that we reevaluate this bill, that we craft some of the tolerances to ensure that we give individuals, undocumented residents, the rights and privilege. But at the same time, it should not come at the cost of every individual in our communities' possible public safety. So with that said, I will not be able to support this bill because I believe the cost is far too great for an idea that may be well-intentioned and noble, but ultimately reality sets in. And as Senator Bradley mentioned earlier, for one criminal indictment, no, I think he phrased it, for 10 criminals to go free to ensure one innocence, that may be a price too big, because if anyone's ever hurt by those individuals that were guilty of criminal action, that is a price far too big to have. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hwang.